Hello everybody, welcome back to the Genesis Designs bench again. Here we are with the video I did try to do on Wednesday. Unfortunately my internet was broken when it came to it, so I was unable to do it. That did get fixed on Thursday, however, what with work and everything else, I haven't had much chance to get caught up, so here we are now. All the way back on Saturday. Anywho, right, this is going to be a quick inbox look at the Fairey Gannet AEW.3 from Sword and also the Zvezda Stuka, which we'll have a look at in a minute. Gannet, it's a plane that only a mother could love, I think, but yet we all do. Don't know what it is about these ugly-ass British designs of the post-war years, but they do have a certain British charm about them, some of them anyway, and the Gannet is certainly one of those. So here we are. This kit has been out a little while, I think. This is a recent re-release or restock. So let's without further ado get a look at some of it here. So we'll start off with the destructions. This is a typical Sword setup. It's just A4 paper folded in half to make a little booklet, which isn't stuck together, so you can get yourself in a muddle quite easily if you really want to. A little bit of history on the front. Then you have a parts diagram for the sprues. Now normally I think these parts diagrams in the instructions are a touch superfluous, but in this case they're actually not, because there's no numbers on the sprue, so just bear that in mind. And here is where we can be happy that the instructions come to bits, because we can keep this bit separately. A lot of Sword kits, anyone who has experience with Sword will be aware, a lot of Sword kits do have resin cockpit parts, and this one is no exception. However, strangely, the resin is not for the cockpit that you can actually see, really. So we'll get onto that in a second. So here's your main office, and then the resin parts are actually for this radar operator's section, which is in the back of the aeroplane, which doesn't actually feature any windows as such like the pilot's cockpit does, so you're left with only being able to view it through these hatches should you choose to leave them open. Slightly odd decision, I think, but hey ho. And we'll carry on through there. There's the really queer engine setup. I do love the way the British came up with some really random ideas at around about this time with their aircraft development. Making this big radar equipped torpedo plane, we need a lot of power, so we're going to need two engines. But how do we get two engines into an aeroplane without making it massive? Oh, I know, we'll just bolt them together and drive a single propeller with them. Great idea, but it worked. So here you go, carrying on. Not going to labour too long on this because it's just instructions. It's a nice little setup diagram there to show you the sort of dihedral you should be looking for in the angles of the undercarriage parts there. Nice touch. Aerials. This is something I really wish that a lot more manufacturers would get on board with. There's proper diagrams to show where the aerials are supposed to go. This is for the stencil data, and then you've got two schemes in this kit. The first being 849 Squadron from HMS Ark Royal, and the second being from HMS Hermes, separated by 10 years. So the earlier version, here's the decal sheet. The earlier version features the red and black stripes for these the finlets on the wings, and the later one has the yellow and black. Otherwise the scheme is the same. It's extra dark sea grey over sky, as you might expect. This one has a bit of tail art going on. It's a bumblebee, if you're wondering. It's a bumblebee, presumably because of the black and yellow stripes. So that's that part done. The decals themselves are typically Sword, very, very thin, very glossy. And if any of the ones I've used in the past are anything to go by, they should be absolutely fine to use and perfectly workable. I think that the colours of the roundels might be a touch off. I think that blue looks a little bright to me, but generally speaking, they look decent, and a nice set of stencil data. There's enough there for it to be busy and for it to be somewhat comprehensive without being thoroughly irritating by being altogether too comprehensive. And I'm sure you all know what I'm getting at. Plastic parts wise, Sword are a manufacturer that I suppose you could call them short run, limited run, cottage industry, all these different names we use. This isn't the mouldings are never going to be on a par with the likes of Edward or Tamiya, but they're actually really decent. And this is something I've found consistently with sword kits that I've built or had contact with, is the moulding and the surface detail is actually really, really nice and very, very fine in a lot of cases too. The payoff, if you want, is the relative crudity, if you like, of some of the smaller parts. I think you can see here, if I try and steady my waving hands, there's a fair bit of flash, not heavy, nasty 70s style flash, but all of the parts have got a little halo on them, mould seams and little nicks and scratches from the moulds that are going to need to be cleaned out if you want to be really precise about it. The detail though is quite reasonable. I'm not super fond of this very heavy detail on the wing panels. It does exist on the real thing. I was moved to actually research this when I looked at the parts. I thought surely it doesn't have these enormous straps all over it. It actually does, but they're not genuinely not quite that big, so I will probably knock those back a bit when I get around to building it. And then the other sprue, there are only two fuselage halves, complete with the radome moulded in already, props, tail planes and some cockpit parts. That's about it really. Very adventurous one-piece engine front. It does have some rudimentary sort of intake detail in there. I think the wheels could be better. This one has some quite prominent sinkage and distress going on about it. They're not great. They'll need a little bit of work, or I'll have to find replacements. But again, the panel line detail and the surface detail in general on these fuselage halves is really, really nice, because it's not really smooth, and the real thing really isn't. The Gannet's quite a lumpy, bumpy, agricultural looking thing, and this does capture it quite well. Now clearly, if you want to show off this radar operator's room that we've got in resin, you're going to have to cut these hatches out. In doing so, you'll probably ruin them, so you'll probably have to make some new ones, because the kit does not include separate ones that I can see. And there you have it. That's the main plastic parts. Fit-wise, I tend to find these kits actually go together pretty well if you give them half a chance. One thing I'm always banging on about, to the point of boring myself, is parts prep. Now, the kind of thing I'm on about is here in spades on this kit. It's mould defects on these inner surfaces, flash, and this, I don't know if it will come up if I come up closely, try and catch the light, but these surfaces are not flat. When you look at them, they taper off towards the edge. So if you just put them together as they are, you will inevitably have a gap. But if you carefully, with a large flat sander, go across the whole thing until you can't see any evidence of that anymore, then they will fit generally. Another point, ejector pin marks. They're quite substantial in places, and these here on the tail planes, these are flat surfaces which have to glue together, so these are going to have to be removed, otherwise they just aren't going to fit. And that's the kind of thing you're going to come up against with kits like this. Personally, I quite like it because it gives you something to do. Some don't. If you're the kind of modeler that doesn't like having to deal with things like that, then honestly don't buy this kind of kit, because you're not going to enjoy it. Simple as that. So transparencies here in this little baggie. Everything's in separate bags on this, which is always nice. Avoids the possibility of excess damage to the parts before you actually get the kit. So we've only got a couple of small windows, landing lamp covers, and the actual pilot's window. It's all pretty decent, not spectacular, but they're certainly not rubbish. Perfectly usable parts there. They're not overly thick. A little bit of distortion in there, but they're good enough. And lastly, well, not quite lastly, but the resin. Here we go. So we get new doors for this operator's area in the resin parts. That's quite sensible. So there's your internal detail for the roof area, the floor. Then you've got 2 equipment racks, one for the front and one for the back, which are very, very nice. Really nicely moulded, good detail. Decent. And 2 seats, which lack seat belts. Quite a nice addition though, I think you'll agree. A good little resin extra there, which quite frankly, if it said Resin on the packet, would probably cost you £15 or £20, wouldn't it? Just for that. But it's included in the kit. Try not to throw it all over the floor. And lastly, we do get a small photo etched brass fret as well with this kit. This includes an instrument panel, some seat belts for the pilot's seat, a windscreen wiper, and a bit of side console detail. Again, it's not spectacular, but it's certainly good enough. Bear in mind that the inside of this plane is, I would assume, black. So the visibility of any of this is quite moot, really. But yeah, a nice package overall, I think you'll agree. It's a really cool looking aeroplane. It's a nice size in 1/72. It's not too big, it's not too small. And I already have the AEW Grumman Avenger, which I think this will look mighty fine sat next to. And I'm obviously going to have to buy the Sky Raider at some point to sit between them, aren't I? Because otherwise it wouldn't be a set, right? So there you go. That's the Gannet. I've neglected to remember how much it cost, but it wasn't a massive amount. If you'll bear with me for 10 seconds, I'll check on Hannants, which is where I got these 2 kits, and I'll tell you. No, I don't want to do that. There we go. History. £15.99. There you go, bargain. So you get all this resin, photo etch, decent decal sheet, and a solid set of plastic parts. £15.99. Very, very good price, I think you'll agree. Worst part about it is horrible end opening box. So once you do start making the kit, you always end up having to find another box to put everything in, because end opening boxes are a nightmare when it comes to that. So moving on swiftly to this. I picked this up completely randomly because I thought, I've never built a Stuka. I've never built a Junkers 87 ever. And I saw this and thought maybe now's the time. So this is the Zvezda 1/72 Ju87 B2 with skis. This is £10.99 from Hannants. Other stores are available. And let's quickly go through what you get. It's quite a diminutive little box. It's not very big. And it trumpets on the front. Snap fit. No glue required. Also an interesting concept for me. In this case, the instructions are one piece, folded paper, perfectly clear and obvious what you need to do throughout. There is a lot of Russian on it, but there's also English for everything as well. You've got 2 crew included if you want to use them. It's actually this is a nice touch actually from Zvezda, I think. You can fit the seats with moulded in seatbelt detail, or you can fit the aircrew who are moulded into their seats so they fit and they don't fall out and rattle loose. Who hasn't had a pilot fall out once they've finished the model and irretrievably glued the canopy on? Because I know I have. Moving on to fuselage joining, trapping the propeller, all bog standard stuff, but allegedly done without glue. And then we've got a selection of bombs, fuel tanks, dive brakes, etc., and our skis. Markings wise, you do only get the one option. Somewhat frustratingly, for an airbrush addict like me, they only supply a very standard scheme without any winter whitewash over paint. But I'm unwilling, honestly, to go out and spend money on aftermarket decals for such a cheap kit, because I'd spend the same again on the decals, wouldn't I? It's a nice little sheet. It's small, as you can see, but everything you really need is there. My recent experience with Zvezda decals suggests that there's nothing to fear. That do work perfectly well, although they can sometimes look a little bit underwhelming on the paper. They do tend to work very, very well. Be careful of their colour call-outs, though, because they're a bit random. But obviously this is RLM 65 underneath with 70-71 uppers. No dramas there. So the parts themselves, we get the two main sprues, all very nice. The moulding quality here, it's very, very good. It's certainly better than the likes of Sword, but it still does have its slight air of crudeness. There is a very definite texture to these finished parts, which I'm going to very much struggle to show, but it's definitely there. We've got very, very fine raised rivet detail throughout the wing parts. No rivets really on the fuselage, just a few fasteners. But again, there's definitely a texture here, and I'm trying to capture it, but I don't think it will show. But very fine recessed detail throughout, apart from these raised rivets, which is nice because, again, the Stuka was far from smooth. We've got a full span upper and a full span lower wing, which is nice. And the flaps, which on this aircraft are not mounted to the main planes directly, they're hanging off the back. They're moulded in, which is, again, for a cheap 1/72 kit that purports to be snapped together, that's exactly what you want. You don't want to have to be fighting with tiny joinings for all these flaps, so that's nice. Excuse me, we've got a one-piece upper nose, so there's no seam to worry about there. There's your pilots moulded in. And then note that we do have full spats and wheels as well. So I may well do it on its wheels, honestly. But we'll see. So the skis come on a separate small fret. Look really nice. Actually look a bit like pseudo floats, to be honest, but there you go. A nice little set of skis for your Stuka. And our canopy on this one, it's nice and clear, no distortion, all in one piece. Come closer. Looks good. So I'm quite enthused by this. I think I might call Zvezda's bluff and actually see if I can make it without any glue. I need to I need to check out my. I'm thinking what might be nice actually is to do like a time lapse, not a time lapse, like time lapse, not stop motion. Tom Grigat is the king of stop motion, and I wouldn't dream of trying to encroach on that. But I think it might be nice to do some sort of time lapse build where I just get on and build it, and it's just taking photographs, and then I edit it down into a video just to show, and do it very, very quickly out of the box in the style of a teenager. I think that could be quite an eye opener. And I do plan to try and do that within the next couple of weeks, but obviously at the moment, for those that keep up with what's going on here, I'm pretty much focusing on the Zvezda C130 still. It's very almost ready for paint now, and I will obviously update and show that on film when I get there, but it's very much almost ready. I'll just do a quick sneak peek. Move you over there. Here we go. We've got masking on the windows. We've got masking everywhere actually. So all I'm waiting to do here is I've got some Mr. Surfacer around where I've been working on the flight deck window area, and I just need to sand that back, and then I can start getting some paint on this beast and see what it looks like then. I think it's going to look pretty cool. So there you go, very quick inbox. I don't like to labour the point with these because you can only tell so much from looking at the parts, but at the same time, if you're considering buying one of these kits, or if you see them I mean, this is such an excellent price. You see it and think, oh, I wonder. You don't want to buy it and end up with an AZ model style or Mac 2 model style load of blobs of horribleness. You want to know roughly what you're getting, and that's where the value in this kind of thing lies, really, for me. So hopefully that's of some help to someone. In the meantime, we'll be back with this one relatively soon. I'll either do a full-on live build, or I'll, as I say, split it down into either stop motion or whatever, and stick it up as an edited piece, and see how that looks. But that's it for now for me from here from the Desmo bench. I'll try and be better with the videos, try and get on sometime next week with something else. In the meantime, please keep yourself safe. Have a lovely rest of the weekend, and I look forward to speaking to you guys again soon. So for now, cheerio, and Desmo Genesis out. Cheerio. Bye-bye.